I'm going to turn on my camera for introductions. Hello, everyone. You have come to the SiD scavenger hunt session, and I'm just going to do a quick introduction of myself, and I'll let Mary introduce herself. I am Jenny Schluckebeer with the SiDSupport, supporting the system, building reports, supporting users, working on compliance, all that stuff with the SiD data system. And my partner, who also, by the way, builds the whole session here. So if you think it looks good, Mary's the one who did it. It looks great. Okay, go
Thank
ahead.
you.
And you are Mary?
I am Mary. That's right. I work with SiDSupport as well, and Jenny and I do make quite a good team, I must say. I really appreciate all the front end stuff that she does here as a facilitator and answers a lot of questions behind the scenes as well. So couldn't do it without her.
Thank you. And throughout this session, I will be doing most of the talking, and then Mary will be in the chat as well, answering questions if you have any content-related questions about the session. So keep your eye on the chat. And actually, as you probably read the description, we're going to be doing a lot of sending you off to look for information, and you'll hopefully be chatting in a lot. So I'm going to also turn off my camera, and we'll get started. So the agenda for today is, or kind of the instructions of what we'll be doing is we're going to have you make sure you have open another browser or another tab in your current browser where you can log into SiD. So you can even maybe go ahead and do that while you're listening to me read through these instructions. And then I'm going to give you scenarios or kind of common report questions that you might get from maybe your program manager, or maybe if you are the manager, maybe your the director of community ed at your school district or the director of your nonprofit may ask you questions about certain data pieces about SiD students or your ABE students. And so we're going to throw out some of those questions and see if you can go find how you might find those answers. So we'll set aside time for you to go ahead and run off and run some reports and come back. So we'll give you a little bit of time for that. For most reports that I'll ask, I'll try to clarify when I ask the question. You're probably going to want to use the date range for the program year 23-24 because that year is done and has all kinds of hours and student information in it. The current year 24-25, there might be some questions that would be relevant, but since it only started on July 1st, there's probably not going to be a lot of data in there. And you might even, like, I think we have a DL question. You might not even have any DL hours in your system yet for 24-25 since it just started in January. So we'll talk through some of that. And then we'll have you hopefully chat in some of your findings. Okay, I see we have a question, but I think Mary got to it. So we'll just go ahead with our first question. This is kind of kind of easy, but kind of tricky. There's a couple ways you might be able to get this. So how many students are currently enrolled in classes at your site? Okay, I'm going to set the timer for, it actually already started, for 2 minutes. I'm going to let you go off. And notice I said currently enrolled. So how many students are currently enrolled? And remember, enrolled at your site means they are currently scheduled into a class. So why don't you go ahead, run off, look at another tab, log into SiD, and come back and chat in your answer for how many students are currently enrolled in your program. I know it's the middle of August, so all right, 327. 110, 600, lots of 48. Metro North, big program. Ling has 25. 26. Wow, we've got programs all over various sizes around here. That's great. Are some of the smaller numbers, I'm curious, are those small programs or are those because you don't have summer programming? So you'll be having students maybe scheduled into classes come September, just out of curiosity. Small programs, cool. 0, somebody's got summer programming not happening right now, probably. Okay. Ah, Ling, yes. Okay. Jody has a medium-ish program, but did not have summer programming. Okay, in a few seconds here, we're going to talk about how you found this number. So we'll get to that next. All right. Looks like a lot of folks. Did anybody have trouble finding how many students they have currently enrolled? Anybody struggling to find that info? You can, don't feel shy. You can put that in the chat. I have no idea where to find it. Great. That's not great, I suppose, but it's great that we have some people. Yes, I found the head count, but not sure if that's the right number. Okay. All right. I said this was a little bit of a sort of a tricky question in a way, um, because you normally don't think about, or you often don't think about how many are currently enrolled. You're often asking how many served, how many were in our program last year, or how many hours did we have? So let's take a look at where, how about if somebody chimes in with where they found the number besides the head count? Count of students in classes, in class, okay. Anything else? Nobody has even said the place that I'm going to show you in a second. Oh, the student tab sorted by checked. That was going to be my answer. Carolyn, table A is going to probably give you the number of students you've had within a certain date range. I'm sorry, not probably, it's going to. Okay, so let's take a look. I think Linda said this one. And then program summary report. Okay, these are all interesting. All students' attendance by month, program summary report. Okay, people ran a bunch of different things, and so this is great. This is perfect. Okay, so let's take a look at what I propose as the easiest and quickest way to figure out how many students you have enrolled right this moment. Okay, so if you go into SiD and you go to the Students tab, you're going to see a grid, as we call it, of all the students you've ever had in your program. So if you look at the bottom of that before you toggle anything, it's going to be probably a big number. All the students you've ever had in your program, they're all alphabetically ordered. Now, if you want to see just the students that are currently enrolled, you got to go all the way to the right, to the furthest right column, and that's the scheduled. And there's options for checked or unchecked, and you want to select the checked. That's going to limit this list now to only those students who are currently scheduled into a class. Then you're going to look at the bottom of the screen and see how many students you have currently enrolled at this moment. Okay, how many of you in this session, this is kind of a new idea to go to this screen and see how many of your students. Okay, Stacy, you got it pretty easy, right? Again, the fine distinction here is how many of your students are currently enrolled in a class this moment as we speak versus how many you served over the course of the year. Okay, Augusto, also nice. Definitely a new idea. All right. Yeah, like I said, you don't often get asked this question, how many do you have currently enrolled? But this is a nice kind of quick and easy way to find that number. And then actually, there is another way that I saw you were throwing out ideas, like I said, that mostly would count students who had hours within a certain date range, which is what table A does, and which is what the program summary report does. But another way of looking at how many students are currently enrolled is you can run the student contact list. Do you ever run the student contact list? It's on the report page. Correct, Carolyn did ask a question. You can't see that at the consortium level. This answer would only be for your site that you're logged into. That's right, Carolyn. That's a good point. So another option, as I mentioned, is to go to the report tab, and about partway down is a report called student contact list. And that contact list defaults to today's date, and it's going to run a list of all the students who are currently enrolled. You can adjust the dates, a start and end date, so you can look for students who are enrolled for the last month or the last year, but it's going to default to today. And it runs a list, and it's going to show students, address, all that stuff, contact information, and it's going to be it's going to be based on who has a current schedule. Okay, so it's kind of a different way of thinking about different groups of students. Again, it's just the currently enrolled students. All right, good. All right, changing focus here for a second. This is a good question that I'm sure you actually do get asked fairly often, or you think about often. Did your student hours, so not numbers of students, not students enrolled, but did your student hours increase from the program year 22-23 to program year 23-24. And extra credit while you're at it, if your hours did increase, what was the percentage of increase? And I'm going to go to the next one so we've got the timer here. Okay, so I'm going to send you off. Come back and let us know if your hours increased, which I think if we were at the state session, we saw that the state's hours did increase overall. So I think pretty much most programs did, but come out, take a look. What report would you run or series of reports would you run to see if your hours increased from 2020, 2022, 23 to 23, 24? And if so, by what percentage? And we have a link here. I think, can you click it? Or should we put it in the chat? For a little quick formula to help you figure out percentage increase. I'm going to try to be quiet for a little bit while I let you go search out. All right, we already have our first answer. Yes, we had an increase of 25%. That seems like a big jump. That's good. We're still coming out of, it seems like we finally, I think was it the numbers of students has it's finally gone over the numbers before COVID, but hours are still kind of working their way back. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else figure out a good place to look up to see if your hours increased from one year to the next? Increased by 10%. Very good. Any more? People not sure where to look. If you aren't sure, we're going to come to our answer soon. So we'll find out. How do I do percent? That's a good question. That's what we have that cheat. Cindy. Mary, did you put maybe you can put a link to that calculator in the chat so people can click on it. Linda has a homemade Google Doc she's used for years to figure out percentage, and she plugs in all her numbers. I think, yeah. Student hours and date range. Oh, this is new to you too. Stacy, I kind of love that you're here in this session so we can make sure we're pointing out all the places to find all the information. Carly said the 5-year attendance report would be easy. I can see that mine decreased. I found one, but you're not sure. All right, so let's take a look where I think kind of the easiest way to do this. The 5-year report. Somebody use the 5-year report. Okay, Mary just put in the link for helping you figure out the percentage increase. Okay, I think on my next answer page, I'll show you how to do the percentage as well. 5-year report. Okay, yes. So the report that I think is the easiest for figuring this out is the report on the report tab in the attendance section, which is near the top. There's a report called the Site 5-year attendance report. And this shows you all the hours that are earned by month. And it starts with the current program year and each year prior. Okay. So this year has just begun. So there's only a few months. So if you look at last year's, you have a total that's going to be in the 24-25 column. And then over here, and then you have the total for the previous year. Okay, and then to figure out percentage of increase, this example now, we have the current year, or the most recent year, 115,534 hours. You subtract the previous year, 92,000 hours. So that means you had 23,000 more this year, 23,478 to be exact. If you take that number, that's how much it increased. So increased by 23,000 hours. You divide it by your first year. So you're seeing how much was the increase as a percentage of the original year. And in this case, in this example, is 25.5%. Okay, we did have somebody who had a little bit of a decrease. All right. The amount of change divided by the original amount. Thank you, Teresa. Such a nice and concise way of saying that. You're probably a math teacher. And if you had a decrease, it'd do kind of the same. You would just have a negative number. And so you just have to put a negative. And perhaps a math teacher can say that easier than me. There were some decreases. Another thing you can do, this report right here, I think is the easiest way to do this. Another nice thing about this report is you could do a single month. So if you wanted to compare, okay, this July looks really big compared to last July, or, May, you could do an individual month here, which are nicely segmented for comparison purposes. Another option, of course, would be you could run last year's table A. And table A goes from May 1st to April 30th, and that's what counts all your hours, and that's what you get funded on. And then you could run the previous year's table A, and you would get these totals, and then you could do your math. I just think this 5-year one is handy, has it all in one page. All right. There are a few decreases. They're very small, so that seems good. All right, we're going to move on to our next question. Changing gears again. Every question seems to be changing gears. What distance learning platforms were used in your program last year? Maybe you just know because you're the DL supervisor, or you just know because you know which ones are used. But where would you look? I'm going to give you just 2 minutes for this because I think it's pretty quick. But what distance learning platforms were used in your program last year? Paper-based and TVM. Sean, did you run a report to figure that out, or do you just know? Corrections. Yes. Commonly and con. Drew, did you run a report to look that up, or do you just know? Where would you go to run a report? Yeah, I figured that might be the case. You just knew. If somebody asked you what DL learning platforms are used in your program, do you know where to go find that info in SiD? Jody said North Star, Essential Education, Rosetta Stone and Moby Max. North Star, Burlington English. I know. Does anybody run a report to get this answer? Yep, somebody hinted at one. Sean, the daily monthly attendance and DL, that's definitely where I would start. There's another report that we made sneaky just in the last week, so you wouldn't even know it existed. Wow, somebody's got a lot. Nick, do you know that because you know all about your DL programming, or did you run a report? Class information. I would look at our proxy hour class list. Very good. Moby Max. I know some of them, but don't know what report. Linda, I think you just spotted the report we just added this last week. Oh, table A for DL. Cap, I don't know if that tells you the DL platform though. Let's take a look. We have 2 different reports that are able to get you this information. So the one on the left here, it's on the report tab in the attendance section, which is near the top. And it's called Daily and Monthly Attendance in DL Classes. I think Sean mentioned that. And this is going to run, this is going to run a list of only DL classes in your program, all the hours per month, etc. But since it narrows it down to DL only, it's a little bit easier for you to look at rather than the overall headcount report. And we have a column in there that shows you the DL platform. So that's circled in red here. So you can kind of eyeball that list and see which DL platforms are used. Now we also just added, like I keep mentioning, a new report that I think is quick and easy. And that is called the Distance Learning Platform Hours. And that runs a beautiful little, what do you call it, bar chart. And this is one, if you run it right now, especially if you're a small program, it's going to default to July 1st to now. You might not have hardly any hours. So maybe you want to change those dates to last year's hours, last year's date range, and then you'll get probably a better eyeball of your DL programs and how many hours in each one of the, this was a little bit easier to also see the total number of hours in each one of the platforms. So this example has 636 hours in LE, 392 in Moby Max, etc. And then there's a second page that we have a little tidbit here that lists them out in like a little table. Okay. And we're going to move on, changing gears once again. Now we're thinking about level type stuff. Is everyone ready? Next question, which EFL, which stands for Educational Functioning Level, which EFL group had the highest post-testing rate during the 23-24 NRS program year? I'm going to start the timer on this right away. So which of your EFL groups had the highest post-testing rate? For the program year 23-24. You know where you would go to look. This one might take a second for this report to run. Because it's calculating a lot of info. So if a lot of programs are running at the same time, it can be a little slower. It is running slow, says Cindy. And Cindy, you're from a pretty big program too. Anybody having success with this report? Anybody? Does everybody know where they're looking? Okay, Caroline, we've got some answers. Here we go. It's only been a minute. I don't know why it's running slow. Caroline says her ESL level 6 group has the highest post-test rate. I found the report, but I'm having trouble interpreting the data. Okay, Ani, that's hopefully we'll be able to clarify that. Matt Miller says his ABE level 6 group has an SPCLC has 71%. I think, Matt, I think that's also a small group of students, isn't it? ABE level 5 has the highest post-test rate. Great. ABE level 5, very good. Whoa, Cepeda has 77.3% post-test rate for your ESL level 1 students. That's a very high post-test rate. Okay, you're not sure where it is? Excellent. Not, I mean, you know, I think it's excellent because we'll be able to go over it on our next slide. Yep, Ruthie, the level gains, MSG, and post-test rates is the name of the report. Your ESL level has 80% post-test rate. That's awesome. Stacy says level 3, didn't know where to look at first, but then you figured it out. It's going slow. I understand, Jody. Jody, can you remind me what program you're from? Maybe E2 with 77% post-test rate. That's awesome. Okay, let's take a look at the answer. 76. A lot of very high post-test rates in your highest group. I don't want to really ask, but oh, Austin is Jody. Thank you. You could also look at your lowest post-test group. All right, let's look at where we find this answer. Good, Cindy. That sounds like helpful. So on the report tab, hopefully everybody knows where this report is. On the outcome reports section, there's a report called level gains, MSG, and post-test rates. You just probably ran it for last year and turned it in if you're the manager by August 1st. Now, most people focus right in on the levels of MSGs and what percentage all passed a level. This one, these last columns here, you probably spent a lot of time looking at, but don't forget about this important column called the percent post-test, which we have highlighted in red here. Then you can look at each educational functioning level. So ABE level 1, they have a post-test rate of 64.4%. The highest one in this group is ESL level 5. They had a post-test rate of 77%. Ani, MSG stands for Measurable Skill Gain. That is the lingo of National Reporting System for counting up level gains, and GEDs count as MSG. Yes. Aha, I know. I'm sorry, I always use the acronyms. I think now's a good time to also look at this. Do you have any groups that seem to have sort of low post-test rates? And this isn't 100% correlation, but it is pretty well correlated that the groups that have the highest post-test rates often have the highest MSG levels when it comes to testing gains. Because how can you show a gain if you haven't post-tested your student? So focusing in and wondering why you might have some with lower level gains, one first thing you might want to look at is their post-test rate. Are you not getting many students in that category post-tested? ESL level 6 with 8% is your lowest. And maybe that group is a group that comes to school for a while and then they go off, they get a job, they leave, and you didn't get the opportunity to post-test them. But that's something important to know. So you can kind of maybe target that population with getting them tested before they disappear from your program. Oh, they start with steps and then go to TABE. Yep. So you might want to finish them out though with steps. Yep, they're moving from CASAS to TABE. Seems to be a common issue with ESL 6. All right. Bonus question. What number of participants earned the GED or HiSET in your program last year? If you have any. Let's look back at the report. It's MSG number 2, GED or HiSET. We've got some programs. We have 12, we have 27. Yes, we have that highlighted here. Sorry. Same report. This column now is highlighted in red, so you can see. We also, if you want to see who those students are, the problem with the level gain report is you have hundreds of students, maybe 1,000. And if you want to focus on who are these 22, who are these 23, we have another report that's listed just below the level gain reports on the report tab. That's just called the MSG report, Measurable Skill Gains. And that just highlights the people with these gains. So you can then click that plus sign and you can see the names of the students who got the GED and the names of the students who got the HiSET. And also the other MSGs in there will be on that report as well. So that one might be handy if you're really trying to hone in on which of your students got the GED or HiSET. Great. All right, let's move along. Okay, here, this one is going to be, I think, maybe the trickiest question we have of the day. Oh, Cindy, thank you for highlighting that in the chat. We also have another report that's called, Cindy highlighted it in the chat there, GED and diploma participants with demographics. That was a report we built a couple years ago. And it shows the number of students with a GED or diploma or HiSET, and then it also breaks down demographics like age, groups, gender breakdown, race, ethnicity. And Joe, do you think, it sounds like you feel like your GED number is a little bit low. It could be that you have students who pass the GED, but if they weren't a participant, if they didn't have 12 hours, then they aren't going to be on the level gain report because it only counts participants. And we do get that question a lot, and that's a bummer. Okay, this next question. What percentage of students did not become participants? Okay, so I'm talking about how many students came to your program, and I should say, again, this is going to be for the 23-24 program year. So the program that year that just ended. What percentage of students did not become participants? So you had students who come, they registered, maybe they even took a test, but they didn't get as far as 12 hours. How can you figure that out? I'm not sure. I think this is the most advanced level question we have on this session. How would you go about trying to figure this out? And I think this might be an upcoming focus, to think about. Do you have a lot of students coming who register and then never continue? How can you focus in on those students? Whoops, I should have started my timer. If your report manager came to you, I'm sorry, your program manager came to you and asked, how many students come and then they never become participants? What percentage is that? If you're just flummoxed and don't know how to answer, you can put that in. You use table A, start with enrollees, and then run it for participants. You have 31% enrollees. Good. Good move, Ruthie. And you just took the difference in the numbers. Not sure how to find. There's a couple different ways. Some are a little more, some will give you a rough number, and I'll explain that. The table A is a good way to do it. NI, no idea. I love that. Augusto, thank you for that new phrase. Pull a table A with the same date range. Pull the level gain post-test report, same date range. Use the 12-hour filter and do the math. I think that's a pretty good way. We have a new report out there too that I'm going to show you what we're going to use. Trying to use the, oh, Nick, you're looking at that GED report. That's a good one. I ran table A, but didn't think about rerunning it with different parameters. Yeah, you can put in the minimum number of hours, right, on the table A. So you can run it for just the, that is the easiest because I have a more complicated way to do it. Maybe I'll take a look now. If everyone's ready, even though it's a little bit early from my 3-minute timer. Here's what I am suggesting. It's a little more complicated. There is a report on the tab, and this report was new last year, and it's called the conversion. It's in the outcome report section. It's below, I think, the level gain reports, and it's called a conversion rate report. And this gives you more flexibility to give minimum attendance hours, maximum attendance hours. Okay, so when you first run that report, first of all, it's going to default to the new program year, so you're going to want to change the dates so that it runs 23, 24. But then leave everything else, and it's going to find all students with minimum hours 0, so they're going to have at least half an hour or so, up to a gigantic maximum. So that's going to find everyone. It's going to find all your enrollees. And what's interesting about this report, if you were to compare it to the level gain report, because it looks a lot like the level gain report, is it's going to have all the levels, the ABE 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but that's going to have a section for no level. So if you have some students in there that never got a test because they came and they went before they even got tested, they're going to be down in a no EFL, which is similar to the table A, having the no EFL. Okay. Then you can run the report again, minimum hours 0, and then a maximum hours of 11.9, and it's just going to find the students who didn't get to 12 hours. So it's going to do that opposite. So you kind of do opposite math than what the math you all were talking about with table A. So this is going to find all those students who only have 10 hours or 5 hours or 3 hours, and then you get a new number, fairly small, I presume. You'll probably see a lot of them are going to be in the no EFL category. So then you take that number and divide it by your total number of students, and you'll know what percentage of your students didn't ever become participants. And if you have a high percentage, like if 26% of your students walk in the door, they register, but then they don't continue, maybe that's something you want to look into. I'm not 100% sure what is a high rate of non-participants. And Scott, I think, yeah, no, you could do that. You could use the table A as well if that's been working for you. I think what you find on the table A, you can put in minimum number of hours, right? So it's going to show you when you rerun it with minimum 12, it's going to show you everyone who has 12 and more hours. So then you have to subtract to get the non-participants to show up. So this one just shows you all the people who have less than 12 hours. So it gets to the same result pretty much. Yeah, for the maximum, in this example that we're using here, we put 11.9 because if you put in 12, you're gonna grab some people who have 12 hours. But when you're doing the table A, I think you were putting in 12. Is that what you're asking? We want to exclude 12-hour people on this
Yeah.
example with the conversion
Yeah,
rate.
so I'm confused as to what I'm asking because I was trying to use I thought if I put in 12 on the table A though that I would be including participants.
Yeah, so 12 on the table A is going to be people, I think the table A, I don't have it in front of me, is minimum hours, right? So if you put, I want everyone with 12 and more hours, you're going to include your 12-hour people and everyone above.
So
It's not a
so
maximum. This
I
one is
would
a
still have
maximum.
some participants, so this actually ends up being a better option
I
because of
think
the
I
fact.
think this one is a little bit more precise. Yeah.
So to be persnickety, just
Yeah.
because I don't dive
That's
as
yours.
deep as you folks do all the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
is there any way to just make it so that also the table A could take in partial numbers?
We could probably do that. Yeah, but I think the table A is looking for a minimum number of hours, where the table A doesn't have this minimum and maximum option.
Yeah,
So here we're looking for the maximum. So we're finding the people who are below it. Whereas the table A is only going to find the people who are above it.
agreed.
Yeah. So we're kind of looking at opposite numbers, opposite groups of people, I mean.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's just whichever way you want to think about what you're looking for. If you can look for the people below the 12 hours, you can look for the people above the 12 hours. So I think this is the best way to find that group who is somewhere between 0 and 12 hours because it has the minimum and maximum on it.
What else would you use conversion rate for?
Um, this is the main thing. I worked with Brandy last year to put this report together, and there were a couple other things she wanted people to look at, which I can't remember offhand right now. We might have a session, might have done a session on it. So let's talk after, Scott, and I'll give you more. But you could just play around with it and look at what options exist. You could look at just the post-test students, etc. You can look at, if you just want to look at students who have 40 or more hours, I mean, you can do that on table A, but that doesn't have level gains. So this one has level gains. So you could put in, I just want to look at students who have 40 or more hours and see if they have better results than your whole group, that kind of thing. I think Mary just linked to a conversion rate report help article. Sherry, does the program summary report also show participants versus enrollees? Yeah, you could. You could run it for all enrollees and then you could run it for participants and then just find the difference, just like table A does. So if there's 1,000 enrollees and there's 700 participants, then that means 300 were not participants. So you could do that as well. Great. Lots of ways to find this info.
Jenny, I was trying to raise my hand. I can't figure out how.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Um, for the post-test piece on the table A,
Mm-hmm.
why do we use why don't we use the 60-hour piece that the state actually likes to see?
What do you mean 60-hour? I mean, I know what they have a goal, but why?
Or hold it, it's what is it? It's it's 40 hours. Yeah, I'm sorry, not 60 hours, my bad. Because has post-test,
Yeah,
the percent that comes out of there,
yeah.
that's gonna start post-testing everybody.
It's asking how many people have been post tested. You're right, no matter their number of hours, but it's just a
Mhm.
good glance, an eyeballing of, but you could look at this conversion rate report and only look at those with 40 and more hours and then look at the post test rate if you want to. And then you'll see it's pretty much higher for only students who have more than 40 hours. That's true.
I
But
withdraw my question.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
good.
yeah. Okay. All right. Actually, we're getting close to the end here, I think. So I'm going to move on. Okay. Changing course again. Speaking of reports that some of you have mentioned, now I'm going to ask sort of like just some demographic questions. What are the top 3 birth countries for students in your program? What if somebody asked you this? What are the top 3 birth countries for students in your program? I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Do you know where to go to look for that info? Top 3 birth countries. I'm going to probably stop you all before the timer for sure. Somebody answered Laos, Mexico, Somalia. Great. Anybody else get their answers yet? Somalia and Ethiopia tied for 3rd. Interesting. Anyone else find their info yet? It's slightly buried, maybe, if I do say. Hopefully you know where to find it. Let's take a look. Ecuador and Somalia. Okay. Here's the answer. So on the report tab, if you go to the outcome report section, choose the program summary report. You've probably run the program summary report before, but for this particular question, you need to go click this buttons over here, these little arrows, so you get to page 3. Page 3 lists the country of origin, and it shows the top 20. A lot of our programs have, you might have 100 different countries that your students come from. So this report just shows you the top 20. I see Somalia, Ethiopia, Mexico, Mexico, unreported Somalia, Ethiopia. This is you can make a student record without putting their birth country in there. So you might have some unreported. So it's just kind of interesting info. So again, it's the page 3 of the program summary report, which you have to toggle to, you have to click the right arrows to get there. Somalia, Ecuador, Mexico. Yes, sorry, Nick. It's under the demographics section, not the outcome. Thank you. Under the demographics section of your SiD account, not the outcome reports. That makes sense. While we're at it, bonus question. What age group is the largest age group in your program? And what percentage of students are employed? You're going to find the answers to these 2 questions on that same report. When we report student ages, we group them in groups. Yep, age 25 to 44. I think that's the largest age group for most programs. I think it's the largest group. Sean, good answer. 0% employed at corrections. Yep, 25, 45. I'm sorry, 25 to 44 is the biggest age group. Wow, pretty consistent. Yep. And what percent employed? 33% employed. Your second group is 45 to 55. 42% employed. 55% employed. Very good. Okay, we're really running out of time here, so I'm going to quickly get to our last couple questions. Oh, here's the answers. You obviously found them on that same report, the program summary, page 1. There's a table of your age groups and the counts and percentages. And there's a table of your work status. Oh, page 2. Work status and the percentages. Employed, not in labor force, unemployed. For Jody, if you're in the program summary report, go to page 3. Okay, last question. Oh, we have a couple more questions. How can you know which test is a student's pre-test for the current program year? You might have to end on this one, you all. How can you know which test is a student's pre-test for the current program year? I really switched gears on you here. We're looking at an individual student. Let's jump right to the answer. So if you look at an individual student, if you look at their screen, their summary screen, for some of you, there's a picture of the student over here. There's their name and address. And there's a little summary of their most recent tests in each subject area. It's called the last test in the subject. For each one of those, it shows you which date they took at what is considered their pretest. And which the last test date is the one that's their most recent. But then, as you know, SiD is going to look for their most recent test prior to the beginning of the current program year to consider it as their pretest. So this column helps you figure out which date was the one that was the pretest date on the summary screen. If you want a little more info, you can click on that assessment tab here. Click on the assessment tab, and it shows you all their test history. Because their summary page only shows the most recent test. You have to go to the assessment tab to see all their test history. You'll see that date. Oh, 8/1 was the one that's their pretest date. You can go see that test, the info about it. And it is now 3:30. I think I have to send you all away. So I hope you kind of discovered some new reports, took the opportunity to maybe learn something new. Mary put in the chat a PDF of our slides. We even had like another question or so. So you'll see some more questions that we didn't get to and the answers for all those questions. So maybe you can use these slides too with your staff if you want to. I'm glad, you know, it went really fast for me too. I always try to time these sessions before we run them, and I thought I was going to have enough time and breezed right through it. I'm glad people had fun. Fun. Who knew you could have fun looking up stuff in SiD, right? That's what I like to hear. Well, maybe we'll do another session like this. We could just do a standalone webinar. Or maybe at Spark, we could throw one in like this. Glad to see the enthusiasm. Linda, I know you love data, so. Oh, Amelia's another fun person who loves data. Thank you all.